All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the RotoGrinders DFS Drive for Show, DFS for Dough. I'm your host tonight, Red Kachik. I also go by Drew Mathews. I'm also joined by Trae. Noto and Cards are out this week. They picked an interesting week. Noto coming off a pretty big call on JT Post, and I saw Grinders Cal, I think, hit an outright and a couple T20s, T10s, everything for like 80K, 70K, something like that on Sunday night. So congrats to Noto for sure. And I think overall our hot takes did pretty well last week, which was interesting. But they picked a good week. I guess Cards is down here in Florida. I don't know where Noto is, but I am joined by Trae, our projected ownership guy. So it'll be pretty cool to pick his brain, especially on a unique week like this. So without further ado, I'll bring in Trae. How's it going?
Good. Doing great, Drew. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this week. It's a little bit different. I mean, the golf world is in such disarray right now, it seems like. So, why not just throw us the Scottish Open right out? I've always paid attention to it. I've never projected for it. And I never really dug in too deep, but I'm very surprised about the strength of the field, and I'm really interested in digging into it.
Yeah, there's been a handful of guys over the years that have, usually the top guys, they'll go over to Scotland or England, wherever the British Open is going to be held, and play usually 2 weeks before the British Open, maybe the week before, 1 or 2 weeks before. And then I guess this week, now that the John Deere moved back a week, and now they have the Barbasol here, and this Scottish Open's a joint thing with the DP World Tour, a lot more of these guys have showed up. So it's definitely a strong field. I kind of view it. I was thinking about this in my head a little bit, because I think there's maybe a nuance with the best PGA Tour guys going to the European Tour to play against those guys on a European Tour course versus if it was a PGA Tour course with all these guys, which would be the same field as maybe, the PGA Championship or something, and then all these European Tour guys coming over here. We wouldn't think about it much differently. So I'm trying to come through with that type of lens. I really do think the PGA Tour guys are kind of a step above the European Tour guys, even though they are more familiar with this style of play. But it is drastically different from a skill set, a skill level.
Very odd, but it's almost as if they're the home team this time. Our PGA are going across the pond, and it's just a different game over there, and so they are a bit at a disadvantage. It being the week before the Open Championship, it's hard to keep those motivation narratives out of your head. Are these guys really motivated to compete? Or are they just trying to tune up for the Open Championship next week? We could probably, in looking at the past leaderboards the last 2 seasons, see some guys really perform well. But motivation is just something that does, I am questioning a little bit.
Well, I think, motivation, it really depends on how they get off to a good start. Because like Colin Morikawa won the British Open, he finished 71st here. But if you look at the top of the board, and we'll get into more of the course stuff and tournament specific things, but like Jon Rahm, Justin Thomas, Fitzpatrick, and Xander all finished in the top 10 last year. So I do think, I don't know the motivation is necessarily to win, like they're really going to be prepping to get into this event to win, but they're definitely using this as an opportunity to get into contention on a really, linksy style golf course in preparation for next week. So it's a difference in motivation, but I still think they're motivated to do well. There's going to be incentives for them to do well, to get a couple extra rounds, tournament rounds on link style for next week at the British Open at St. Andrews, which will be a great venue, 150th. Crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. It's, you mentioned it before. I love the PGA Tour going to the DP World Tour on their home course, mixing up those two tours. And now I didn't think we would have this, but we have a third layer of looks like we're going to have 3 live golf players in the field now. With Ian Poulter and Justin Harding and one other, I forget his name, but their suspensions had been stayed in a court there in the UK. So it looks like we're going to have a field beyond what we thought was set at 156.
Are you talking about this week or next week?
This week.
Really?
Yeah, I just saw it just a few minutes before getting on. It looks like Ian Poulter had led a case that he had won, and their suspensions in this tournament have been stayed. And it looks like we may have 3 more entries into this field. Ian Poulter, Justin Harding, and one other guy.
Yeah, I think I saw some tweets about it. I think like Patrick Reed was talking to the DP World Tour, and I know Pat Perez flew back across the pond to play today in that Pro-Am thing. I don't know if he was playing in this. That's interesting that they're going to lift it for this.
Yeah,
I think they're doing. Did you see the fine that they're doing? I know we don't want to talk too much about Live, but I thought that was interesting. So apparently, the DP World Tour is going to issue $100,000 fines for every Live Tour event that you play in, and then you want to play in a European Tour event, a DP World Tour event, and it's doubled for every subsequent Live Tour events that you play. So, for example, I guess it was maybe it was Poulter. I thought it was somebody else, but it was $100,000 fine for the first one they played last week or this past week, for another $200,000 fine. So just to tee it up in the whatever next event, maybe it's this one, they have to pay a $300,000 fine just to play, which hopefully the Live Tour just compensates them.
We'll see. It's an absolute mess, and I'm happy to plant my flag on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour for myself. But it's something that's just not going to go away, unfortunately, anytime soon.
All right. Well, let me kick some kudos to last week. I assume you watched a good bit of the event. I think it was somewhat anticlimactic with JT Poston going wire to wire, especially for a guy that's already won. It wasn't like somebody, Chris Goddard played well, but maybe if it was Chris Goddard up in, first place wire to wire, it might have been a little bit more exciting, at least for me personally. But I do want to give a hat tip to Noto on the JT Poston call for sure. I kind of mentioned that at the top of the show. Cards. Justin mentioned Chris Goddard's going to pop for a top 5. I'm not sure that was exactly a hot take, but he did finish T4. So you got that one right. And I was a little bit too hot. I went no one over 8K cracks the top 10. It was looking good on Thursday. It did not pan out over the weekend. And then Fear the Turtle. Sahith Thegal missed the cut, which was almost going to happen. And then he fired a pretty good round on Friday.
That was close. And then Thegal came back aggressively, and he really put some scores up in the second and third round.
65 Friday and Saturday.
He really brought it
quite a bit.
I was impressed with Poston for sure, and watching him. He's got his demeanor is so stoic and so unemotional. If he hits a great shot, he's just like, yeah, I meant to do that. If he hit a bad shot, it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen again. He's just so stoic, and it's always nice. You never want to admit to this unless you win. It's nice to see him, be very humble at the end and admit that he wasn't, so calm, cool, and collected on the inside. And it was really nice to see him win. And that's what I love about the PGA Tour. These guys really do care. It's such heated competition, and the pressure he was feeling going wire to wire, slipping on that lead 3 nights in a row, is tough. That's so tough. I thought he'd crumble. But kudos to him for pulling it off. Goddard up, I was surprised his ownership was so much buzz going in, settled in at just 10%. But overall, it was a very, very chalky, winning roster there, getting over 16%. I mean, you had Zayden Houghton, you had Cameron Davis, JT Poston in that winning roster, single shot winning roster, 200K, Adams Vinson, and Scott Stalling. So it was, it came in at average ownership of 16.23%, which pretty high, very, very chalky.
Yeah. What is that? 92%, something like that total?
Total. I always do it the other way. It's
I know.
Nice.
I think of it on the opposite side.
So very chalky. I usually see, those type of fields coming in a little bit lower than that, but
interesting.
It did hit.
Yes, it did. Nothing too big of a takeaway. Obviously, they have the alternate field event for the Barbasol. I don't know if they had contests up yet or not, but tonight we're going to talk about the Genesis Scottish Open, a really strong field. So if you're ready, Trae, we can go ahead and hop into that.
Yeah, let's jump into that top tier.
All right. Before we get into that, definitely check out scoresandodds.com. That's a RotoGrinders site as well. It's your number one place for all things sports betting. You can check it out for daily expert picks, analysis, and tools to make you a better sports bettor. I know I follow, what is it? Something Turd. Knifer. He goes by Knifer and Turd. Grant. Grant's been on a heater. I think he was up like 18 units last week. It was pretty crazy. So definitely check out Scores and Odds. It has a great job, compiling all the odds and having the expert picks MLB when NBA is in season, et cetera. NFL is coming up soon. So check it out for everything that you want in terms of betting. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the golf course. I don't know a ton about it in terms of watching it, and there's not a ton of data from what I could find. So obviously from my perspective, all the data that we pull is all PGA Tour related. So we do course comps and all that stuff, but it's always relative to the PGA Tour. So for this event, it does look like it's been hosted here the last 3 years. It's a par 71, 7,300 yards, has 4 par 5s, 5 par 3s. So a little bit unique in the par 71. I think it's overall pretty traditional links style golf course. It's pretty much linksy rough, fescue. It looks like it was very wind dependent or weather dependent, I should say, the last couple of years. So I looked at the winning scores. 2021, which was last year, -18 under par was in a playoff. Matthew Fitzpatrick, Thomas Dietrich, and Minwoo Lee, 18 under par. 11 under par won in 2020, and then 2019 was 22 under par, so a bit lower. So I assume it was a little bit milder conditions during that event. So for the most part, it doesn't change. I'm a pretty standard guy week to week. I think people try to overfit a lot of data for the upcoming golf course, and certainly scoring is relative. I think scoring is probably the biggest factor, not so much quote unquote driving accuracy. You know, the guys can figure out a way to hit it straighter if they need to, depending on the type of golf course. So for me, when you see it like 18 under par, 11, 22, it's really difficult to figure out a scoring angle, I should say, but I will look at the course history. So I'll bring up Trae if you have any thoughts, and then I'll talk a little bit about the guys at the top of the board that played last year and played well. So that might be something you lean into, and maybe you can kind of comp some guys to just, you know, are better maybe in the Open Championship in this type of style play.
Yeah, I really lean on course history quite a bit early in the week and releasing the initial projected ownership. And it's just hard to find. There's so many services out there just aren't able to import the course history. Mm-hmm. And I struggled to get it early in the day. So I just, pivoted off that in my initial run. Later in the week, I'll start to dig in a little bit more there. But what I did find was that this course was definitely designed with wind in mind. And they just haven't had it here in the last 3 years of this event. And there's only been, in my research, just one round in 2020 that had any significant wind, one nasty day. So I think the data may be a little bit skewed towards it being an easy course, but certainly if we get some wind and the greens get firm, this thing could tighten up quite a bit. We may not see those low scores. However, you know, I always want to rely on Kevin Roth here at RotoGrinders, and we're still a little bit far out. Just looking at Wind Finder and looking at the wind patterns for Thursday and Friday there, it doesn't look too bad. I think Wednesday looks very nasty, but things calm down a little bit Thursday and Friday. Still, we want to keep an eye on the weather. It does have an impact on ownership if there is a weather edge, a tee time AM PM wave that emerges, and it does have a significant impact on ownership late on Wednesday.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Kevin Ross, a good one. If you haven't already, you can check out, I'm doing a weekly blog. So daily I'll drop some course notes, some data points, mostly data centric. And then as we go into Showdown, I'll drop some nuggets on guys that are really exceeding in proximities. And we have certain, our own site, we call it Spectrum Data. And it's shot by shot level data. And we try to capitalize on guys that are trending up after a previous 2 rounds going forward. So on Wednesday night, definitely check back. I'll try to drop some notes if there's anything in terms of weather, like Trae said, because I do think you don't want to go overboard on stacking waves, but certainly in really volatile conditions in Scotland or England, Ireland, etc., you're going to want to try to capitalize a little bit on the waves, especially if there's going to be any wind. It doesn't mean you have to stack AM, PM specifically. You could even go the opposite wave. And then if the wind shifts or transfers kind of time frames, I guess, that's a good way for you to get leverage on the field. Because like Trae said, everyone's going to, if there's an obvious AM, PM wave advantage come Tuesday, Wednesday, everyone's going to jam it. And then if you get the opposite side, you'll get studs at like 4-6% owned versus you get Scotty Scheffler 22, 28% owned. So there's a big difference in the waves. So definitely keep an eye on that, and I'll try to drop some notes into our blog on Wednesday night. As far as this says that this locks 6 a.m. on Thursday, but that can't be right.
No, it can't be right. We have to be real careful. You know,
Yeah.
the Open Championship is always one where I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I had more time to do ownership here, and it's such an early start. And DraftKings still says here, I'm Central Time in near Tulsa, Oklahoma. Says 5 o'clock on Thursday morning. That's not right.
That's not right.
Hopefully they'll update that up soon. Don't rely on that. Looking at they start around tea times, local time, 7 o'clock. So that would put it here for me in Central Time zone, it locking around 1 o'clock. So East Coast, you guys around midnight. So please bear that in mind, everyone. This is a very early start. It's good to have this practice run before the Open Championship. It always catches me off guard a little bit every year. So, just keep an eye on that early lock. There's nothing worse than having dead lineups in there. So keep an eye on that early lock.
Yeah, I've seen a few DP World Tours start at like 10 p.m. my time. So I didn't want to say Wednesday night and it locks at 10 and there's no time for you to do anything at that point. So yeah, so if it's around midnight, then you should have enough time. I'll drop stuff in by 8 o'clock. All right, let's talk a little bit about the plays, Trae, if you're ready.
Sure, let's do it.
For me, I was trying to get my overall. I haven't built any lineup, so I don't know exactly. Generally speaking, if it's priced like this, at least from what I can tell, balance builds is probably going to be ideal. There is some significant course history for the top guys, which I'll list here in just a second. But generally speaking, when you go down the board and you see like Max Homa at 8K, Billy Horschel's down there 8,200, who's just been playing well, Corey Connors 8,300. That immediately speaks to me it's going to be more of a balanced build approach. Like you can get pretty good value off of those prices, especially knowing that there's a lot of unknowns with the 6K down. There's going to be a lot of unknown European Tour guys. And even if they are known, they're going to be volatile. I mean, I think I played a guy last week getting ready for this week and next week. And I think he shot like 69 or 68 on Thursday. And I believe he shot 79 on Friday. 10 shots worse. So they're very volatile, and I want to try to avoid that as much as I can. So for the most part, let me pull up the course history really quick. Wherever I had that. Here we go. All right. So last year, interesting enough, John Rahm finished 7th. Justin Thomas finished 8th. Matthew Fitzpatrick, I mentioned, finished 2nd. Xander Schauffele finished 10th. And Scotty Scheffler played and finished 12th. So it's, as you can see, like the top of the class did really well. As you go down, there's some European Tour guys that pop, like Lucas Hebert finished 4th. He's actually finished 4th here the last 2 years. So to Trae's point, I do think course history plays a part. It does play a part in my process. I would suggest you look at it like Robert McIntyre is a Scotland native, and he has finished 18th and 14th the last 2 years. There might be an edge in looking at some course history because, like Trae said, it was difficult to find. You're not finding it on most of the PGA Tour sites that you look at generally every week. So those are the main guys. The other one, like Minwoo Lee, won last year. He hasn't been playing great, so I don't really have much interest. But there's a few European Tour guys that are definitely worth plugging in. I don't know, Trae, if you had any thoughts on that specifically. You mentioned you looked at the course history, so I don't know if you had any.
Yeah, I did look a bit at the course history, and definitely the cream does rise to the top here. And but they're again, like Minwoo Lee. I mean, he was highly motivated here, and there are 3 open spots into the Open Championship available here for people that aren't currently qualified for the Open Championship. So there's going to be some significant motivation for this year's possibly Minwoo Lee that can crack a big win and get into the Open Championship or even into the top 3. I do agree with you, Drew, that this does set up price, considering the pricing and the odds value considerations, that definitely sets up to be more of a balanced build week, mainly because things get really weak towards the end into the below 7K range. There's really not a lot of obvious plays, and I see a lot of lower and very even distribution of the ownership down there. So there's not a lot of, there's no Chris Goddard ups down there. I don't see a lot of obvious easy chalk plays down there that would help free up salary for the top tier.
Yeah, And even to the point of like those top guys finished well last year, but you can't jam in all the top guys. You're going to have to find some value. So there's a few that you can get to. And like I said, I think looking at course history, I even think looking at last week's form from some of the European Tour guys is a good way to go. If they can continue good form into this week, it might be a decent edge if you followed the DP World Tour for the last few weeks. And again, that's not reflected in the PGA Tour stats. So it's more of a nuance in looking at course history and recent form, like overall versus specific stats. So with that being said, we can talk a little bit about these guys. Like I said, everybody up here for the most part at the top range played last year and played really well. Xander's coming off a win. Scotty Scheffler's still grading out really well for me at 11-2. It's just really tough for me to play anybody over 10K this week. So what I'm looking for is going down to a guy like Zalatoris. I think he has some motivation to really get acquainted with European style golf, getting ready for the Open. Cantley's playing well, and that would honestly, Colin Morikawa doesn't grade out great for me, but his approach numbers have been good. And 9,400, I find he's probably a better value than some of the other guys in that 9K range. Like Sam Burns has been playing good. I struggle to get Sam Burns right, and it's sad to say because I think if I played him every week this year, I probably would have got him right more than 50% of the time. But yeah, Colin Morikawa, the ball strikers in that range for me. Zalatoris, Morikawa, and Cantley showed a little bit of form recently. That's something I want to kind of lean into for going into next week.
I see in the upper tier here, there's just some question marks that remain. Scotty, just he's number one and he still grades out well across the board. But he hasn't really, well, he did finish, second, obviously, at the U.S. Open. But he's just so expensive. We still haven't gotten used to him being the top salary guy, So it's still, I believe his ownership is going to pick up a little bit more than it has the last couple of weeks in larger, better, stronger fields like this. But certainly he's not going to be overriding chalk. JT's got, a few questions mark. I mean, that he did withdraw from the Travelers, probably not a big deal, but he just he's not too far off from his big win at the PGA, and people have kind of, his ownership has definitely been middling a bit for a guy like JT. Fitzpatrick and Schauffele coming off wins. We all know how we feel about players coming off big wins. It's hard to go back to them. It's hard for them to win back to back, and I always see their ownership, have a ceiling when they come off a big win. And Cantley's got that, the specter of Liv. Is he the next big guy? Of all the top tier guys that are going to go to Liv, Patrick Cantley's probably number one on the list. And I just some of his answers when he was put on the spot to answer to his interest in Liv, he has not given the most compelling, convicting. No. He just looks like he's headed that way. So, I think that could turn people off. Maybe it's something in the back of his head that's not keeping him in the present, if you will. Morikawa, the numbers still look good, but man, if you watch him, the baby cut's not there. He's showing some two-way misses. He's playing a draw. That's not Morikawa. People are. It was tough to watch him in the last tournament to see that baby cut not there, and so that I haven't seen any news, any evidence that he's got that figured out. I really like Zalatoris. He's just he belongs, in this salary range. I really think that he is the guy that's going, of all the 9K plus guys, he's the guy that to me looks like is definitely ready to pop for a major win. Although, I believe it was this tournament last year where he got hurt. Didn't he get hurt in this tournament last year? He got in the rough and he hit in the fescue.
Yeah. I mean, he weighs like 135 pounds. So
yeah, he's put on a little bit of weight. He's up to 150 right now. Right?
Maybe. Especially if it rains in Scotland, he's going to get up there. Zalatoris just from a ball striking standpoint, he's just too good. And I'm not too concerned with Morikawa. I think there's a lot of ways to get it done with link style. But to me, I'm at least looking at value. And Morikawa at 9,400 is significantly, at least in my opinion, more value than even JT. That extra 1,000 can go a long way at the bottom range. Win equity might be, honestly, win equity probably is about the same. Even if you take into consideration he's not hitting his baby fade, I view that a little bit more lightly. But I think for the most part, all these guys over 9K are kind of in the same bucket in terms of win equity or top 5 equity, even in my opinion, and getting a little bit of value with a Morikawa, a Zalatoris. I don't have any problem with it. Sam Burns, he played well here last year. That's probably the best way to go. Otherwise, if you start with Scheffler, your remaining salary is like 7,700 on average, which you can get it done, but you're going to have to probably dip into 2 low 7s at best, and probably a 6K guy, which is just going to make you uncomfortable. So I just, the way I view it, if you look at Scotty Scheffler 11-2, if you look at Sam Burns at 92, that's a $2,000 price difference. That's a big difference when you consider a 7K guy, and now all of a sudden you go from 7K, you can play, Victor Hovland or Sungjae Im. It's a big difference in a two-man deal. It's funny how the pricing works that way. Such a big difference at the top, but I don't really think there's too much you can go wrong up here. If you want to talk about motivation, I'm not sure Matt Fitzpatrick has a ton of motivation for this week. Maybe next week. I think next week could be fine for a major. But from what I've seen, he's been doing all the publicity stuff, all the media stuff, which is expected after a U.S. Open win. He's doing a ton of these swing videos. I'm watching him, swinging 130 miles per hour, and he's 5'6" or whatever. So if of any of the guys that I would question their motivation for this week, and he played well last year, obviously in the playoff, Fitzpatrick would be the guy at 10-1 I probably would avoid.
Yeah, he just got his first major, so it's hard to keep that motivation there. But
he has good course history. Like if you just looked at it from a number standpoint, I think Fitz would check a lot of boxes for people. And for me, the nuance with what he did at the U.S. Open would be all the publicity, all the media afterward. I would probably avoid that situation. The guy that I've been going back to and wanting to go back to more and more, and I just want to get your opinion really quick from an ownership perspective, is Jon Rahm, because Jon Rahm has not exceeded value. It seems like since, he at the Mexico Open he won, but even then I'm not even sure he exceeded value necessarily, besides winning in the GPPs. But since the beginning of the year, he continues to be priced up this high, continues to get ownership, and it's just slowly dropping. And I don't know if it's enough to go after, but at a certain point, the win equity has got to be there for Jon Rahm. And like, this would be a perfect style golf course for me, for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been a very disappointing year for him, no doubt. And he's shown signs, and he's been very emotional. He's definitely fighting it. He wants it. It's obvious. But I do think that he is going to be the one here that emerges as the top owned guy in the 10K range. Scheffler he has consistently remained below Rahm in ownership over the last 3 or 4 outings, and Rahm is I see him pushing 20% here this week. JT is going to linger.
It's crazy, right?
14 or 15, and Fitzpatrick's still going to be around the 17% range, and Xander a little bit behind.
Yeah. It's just crazy that his ownership is not caught up, and his price hasn't caught up either. I really do think the DK pricing reflects ownership a little bit. Like if you're getting bought up at 20%, they're not going to move your price down, even if you underperform, which is
there's no doubt that the DK algorithm keys off ownership. There's no doubt, and you see that really apparent in really young hot players that go up really quickly.
Right.
And obviously, we're seeing that with Chris Goddard now.
For sure. Quick, I just realized I could click comments on this chat. Happy 4th. Yes, I forgot. Happy 4th of July to everybody in America, at least. And then Bill Thomas, the blog is awesome. I like it, especially for Showdown. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right. So with the top of the board gone, let's talk about this mid-range. Like I said, I like going balanced. I could see an angle for most of these guys. There's definitely holes in some of them. Victor Hovland, I'm not sure what's going on. He's just not been the same Victor Hovland of late. His recent form is really bad. I think his best finish if I had it up, was a 21st place almost a month and a half ago, and he hasn't cracked the top 10 pretty much all year, at least in the last 4 months. So I think the guy's same with the ball striking standpoint. When I think of link style, I think of guys that can control their golf ball. Sungjae Im has not played this event, at least from what I could tell. I do like him at 8,700. I think that's a good value. Corey Connors is fine at 8,300. And then Max Homa is probably my favorite. I've been very high on Max Homa all year. At 8K, he has not been priced up. And I guess that might go to the point of his ownership has just not been high enough for DK to move him. But man, Max Homa's exceeded value almost every single time he's teed it up. So I'm a very big Max Homa fan. He's done me great this year. And at 8K, I don't know how he'll do necessarily in link style, but in terms of PGA Tour level talent at his price, Max Homa is an easy one to plug into most of my lineups this week.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on Max Homa. And I think that's going to be a very popular play there in that range. Billy Ho and Cameron Young, I don't think we'll really get there in terms. Cameron Young is his first foray here in link style golf, and I think we're going to kind of have a wait and see approach on him. Corey Connors looks really, really good for this style of play. Tommy Fleetwood, kind of a home game for him. This is his bread and butter, and I see him picking up steam as the week goes on. The player that I'm still just have massive sticker shock on is Ryan Fox there at 8.5. He's on an incredible heater here in the Euro Tour, but man, his odds are still looking pretty solid there too at 45-1, which fits in very well in this price range. But that's 8.5 for Ryan Fox. I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him at 7.5, and then let's jump on. But that sandwiched in between Joaquin Niemann and Tommy Fleetwood, it's really interesting. It's probably the most interesting pressure point for projected ownership for the week for me.
Yeah, I was about to say it'd be easy to make him chalk at 7,500. It's a little bit tougher up here. He has not. I mean, he's been playing. Recent form is great. He has, let's see, 5 top threes in his last 6 starts. Pretty impressive. He hasn't played great on this golf course necessarily. 2 missed cuts and a 44th in his last 3 years. But yeah, to your point, I think we're dissecting DK's algorithm all night tonight, I guess. But obviously the odds go into their pricing, so that's essentially where it goes. They can't make him too long. He's been, if you're finishing top 3 almost every single week, you tee it up. That's a big outstanding balance if guys take a big hit at 100-1 or something like that. So it makes a bit of sense. But like you said, a Joaquin Niemann over Ryan Fox, that head-to-head's got to be massively favored against Niemann, you would think. Again, on most weeks, the European Tour might get a little bit, who knows how their models work. The European Tour, being a European Tour style golf course, might just give an extra bump to Fox to make it closer. But for the most part, you would never pick Fox over Niemann or Sungjae Im, et cetera, on a normal PGA Tour round to round, or I should say head to head in a round.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely acclimated to this style of play, and that run that he has been on here recently is extremely impressive. He was second at the Irish Open and the BMW, third place, second place at the Dutch Open, but then do you see cut at the U.S. Open and 54th at the PGA? So that's
to my point. Yeah, to my point. When you consider the PGA Tour talent, exactly. That's the exact yes. When you look at the field, it's really difficult because, like I said, when you take this field and you go to Scotland versus going to a PGA Championship, it's you kind of think about things a little bit differently, and you probably shouldn't. If this was a PGA Championship, then Ryan Fox at 8,500 was a joke because he was 6,700 at the PGA Championship. Obviously, it's obviously much stronger in the PGA Championship field. But to the same point, the European Tour twist makes this interesting, and it probably shouldn't be. Is basically my point. At 8,500, Ryan Fox should be lower owned than 10%, but he's going to get enough ownership to justify fading at that price for sure. The rest of those guys there, nothing too noteworthy in the 8K besides the guys I mentioned, which was pretty much everybody, to be honest. Would you say the one fade you had was Cameron Young? Would that be Fox?
I love Cameron Young, but I just think I just want to wait to see how he does, how he acclimates here to this link style of play.
Yeah,
he'll probably maintain over 10%, but I definitely I'm going to shy away from Cameron Young here. What about Spieth? What about Hideki?
Not a lot of Hideki. I was checking your ownerships. He's just very high, which I was surprised by. And also, Spieth kind of makes sense. Spieth makes sense just from his open record. I would probably be more inclined to eat some Spieth chalk than play Matsuyama. But I think, honestly, it's going to be pretty volatile. So I'd probably just avoid that. It's, 50% right there, or 40% right there. So between those two guys. So yeah, I like Spieth, but I'm not sure that ownership makes sense for me to play. I'm not saying you're doing a bad job.
No, you're fine. It's early in the week.
No, it probably does make sense.
I struggled to get I got the ownership out early this afternoon. I prefer to do it later on Monday.
No, you're doing great. This was not
the tallying cycles. They don't really start until later this evening. So things will change quite a bit. I do update the ownership multiple times a week, at least 4 times. Barring any, withdrawal activity or, weather related news. So, you constantly want to keep an eye on that ownership. It will move, and you can track the current ownership, of course, throughout RotoGrinders using Lineup HQ, or you can go to my direct article to see the actual changes on a daily or bi-daily basis.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. Again, I think you're doing great with the ownership. It was just more of a fact that at 22, we'll just say 20 to 25%, is a bit of a stretch for a guy. He's been playing okay, just not playing as well as I would want to pay 25% or eat into 25%. But the flip side of that is, as far as his open style record, I mean, he's been fantastic. He won in 2017, a T9 in 2018, a second place last year. And then he sandwiched a T20 in 2019. So of any of the guys going over here, I would say Spieth is probably most comfortable from the American side, is most comfortable playing this style of golf. His record has just been phenomenal. Maybe Morikawa turns into that guy, but I do think Spieth is deserving of the ownership because his record in the Open Championship has been that good. All right, we can hop down into the 7K range. I don't know if those guys normally break up in the high 7s and lows, but I only had a couple guys I wanted to hit on. So if you want to lead off in this range, anyone specific, I'll let you go from there.
Well, we had Ryan Fox that popped up a little bit high on the salary list here, and we have a couple other guys, Euro players that are on heaters too, and Adrian Maronk. Is that am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And also, we're more familiar with Lucas Hebert, but both of those guys are coming in pretty hot to start out the week. And of course, I actually would prefer, you already mentioned Robert McIntyre there at 7.6. Okay. I think he is coming in at a little bit lower ownership, and I like his upside.
Yeah, Hebert is very tempting. Played well last week. He finished 9th on the European Tour. At a course, he played well the prior year. So course history seems to run well with Lucas Hebert, and he's finished 4th here each of the last 2 years. So definitely likes this style. That alone is probably enough for me to be super interested. I don't know where your ownership. I didn't scroll down.
You got about 8.5 there for Robert McIntyre to start out with. Adrian Maronk's a little bit lesser known name, not nearly as recognizable, so he's going to be a lot lower.
No, that's good. Yeah, and Hebert is who I was talking about. 12.5% is probably right. I think that's a good bump for him, just off of his course history. For me, really, the couple guys that I want to play more so at the price than anything. Mito Pereira at 7,700 continues to play really well, even with the letdown at the PGA Championship. I like him quite a bit. Aaron Rise playing well at 7,400. I don't know what he finished last week. I had it pulled up. A couple of the other guys, I'm curious if Bezadenhout can play well in this style of golf course. Because what's interesting is from last week, and I saw some people tweet it out. Bezadenhout's not generally a birdie or better guy. He's like 180th or something in birdie or better on tour, and we run a birdie or better stat, and he's right around field average. So it's kind of interesting to see if this golf course plays, 10 under par or 20 under par could be drastically different for Bezadenhout at 7,500. But he's been playing well, and I'll probably have some exposure there. Jordan Smith at 7,300, and maybe you just didn't get down that far. He's another guy that played really well last week. I like him from a European tour side. And then going down a little bit further, Mr. Luke List at 7,200. We'll see what the green speed is generally over there. And I don't want to harp on really micro stats, but we know that Luke List isn't the greatest putter in the world, but his ball striking is usually good. If he can play well tee to green here, I don't think he can get lost with the putter. The greens are generally slower, is my point. Just because of the wind. If it's blowing 25 miles per hour, they can't have the greens at 12.5 on the stemp because it's going to be blowing. They'll just keep running off the greens. So we'll see how those slower greens do for Luke List. But from a tee to green standpoint, he's probably better than everybody in the 7K range over the last, we'll say, 3 months.
Yeah, it just cringe when I watch him putt. It's just a nightmare. He gets so close. The approach, off the tee is just really, really nice. It's just link style. I'm worried about his putting. He's going to get some ownership. There's no doubt. But I think in this range, I really feel like this is the range that people are going to feel more comfortable, reaching out to those prototypical link style players. This is where they're going to say, maybe I'll wait for List when I get back across the pond. And I'm going to take a chance on the Hao Tong Lee. Minwoo, maybe not Minwoo. He's not playing really well right now. Sister is, that's for sure. But, this, I think we're going to see a lot of play with Aaron Rai and with Abear and Robert McIntyre. But, Luke List, maybe they'll be a little bit worried about him adjusting to the link style play.
It could be. I mean, there's a few guys in there that in one side, I don't really want to overweight the link style because a lot of, like I said, you can get it done a lot of different ways. We've seen Tiger play really well there, and he's also played well at the Masters. So it's not like a drastically different style of golf. Same with Spieth. Spieth won the Masters. He's also won the British Open. So I don't want to get hung up too much on link style, but some of these guys, we haven't seen them play, and maybe it just in their mind, it is different golf for sure. And I've heard a lot of guys say that it's different golf. You're not playing target golf. You're just playing golf. You're not playing to a spot necessarily, but you're playing to an area. So yes, to your point, there is some unknowns with some of these guys playing link style over others that are very used to it, like an Abear. Like I said, Jordan Smith, I do like. What do you feel about Mr. Sebastian Munoz? I feel like he is just such a good scorer.
He is a good scorer. His odds weren't too good there. Starting here on Monday, his odds to win, but he is getting a little bit of buzz. But I again feel like he's going to lose out a little bit towards some of the the Euro players with Euro link style experience here. I really think people want to take that leap in this range. I think that they'll kind of shy away from the Brian Harmons and the Keith Mitchells and Harold Varners and kind of go towards the Bezadenhouts, the Rays, the Jordan Smiths in this range. I think that maybe they'll be overthinking it. Maybe
exactly.
I think they're going to overthink it here a little bit. There's some pretty easy checkoffs here, I believe. I think we're going to see very light ownership on the likes of Gary Woodland and Chris Kirk and Alexander Noren. But I think we're going to have a little bit of ownership bubbles here with people reaching for players with a good reputation, so-called reputation in this area. If the wind picks up, these guys are really going to pick up their ownership too.
Absolutely, yeah.
People are going to flock to him. They're going to get the hell away from Luke List and go to the likes of Jordan Smith or Bezadenhout. But we'll just have to check back in on the weather.
Yeah, another example. I mean, people are probably going to look at at the course history that they can find for this venue and look and rely on it too much. Like just me personally, when I'm looking through this and say, we'll talk Luke List. We haven't, we don't know necessarily how Luke List is going to do well here. He's never played this event, but he's been playing well recently. When you go down a little bit further into like a Thomas Dietrich, who has played here each of the last 3 years, has like a top 20, I think, 2 years ago. 30th 2 years ago and a second place last year.
Yeah, that might be enough. Last year, I believe, wasn't he?
I think he was, yes.
Yeah.
So the course history, for most people is enough right there to say, oh, well, Dietrich's a better play because he's at least seen the golf course before. So that might, like you said, the ownership bubbles will probably start to lean towards guys that have at least played here before. And that's probably an opportunity, just to kind of go against your gut instinct of saying, well, I want to play the comfort guy, the guy that's played here before, plays a lot on the European Tour. Give me some PGA Tour guys in this range. You should get him at a discount, like you said, and that might be a great way to get some leverage on the field where mostly is going to be chalk bubbles. I think that's, let me see, 7K. Yeah, like there's a few guys you didn't like. In GPPs, it's really interesting. I'm a big guy on recent form, not just statistically, but there's some guys that really start to play well, and they'll carry it forward to the next week. We saw that with JT Poston last week with his win. He played great at the Travelers, played great on Thursday, and kind of just meddled through the rest of the weekend, and then crushed it last week. There's a few guys down here in 7K that I'd be interested to play. Richie Ramsey's the same way. Thomas Dietrich, like I said, and Haotong Li won 2 weeks ago, and you mentioned him. So that's also a way that I could look at it at a different angle, is the European Tour recent form, to see if any of these guys that have just started playing well. Because again, we're not looking at necessarily the same comparable data, but the good finishes are good finishes, in my opinion. So with that, I don't know if you have any final thoughts in the 7K range, but we can talk about any potential values. But a lot of these values, as when I do lineup construction, I get a little bit more loose as I go down the board, and that recent form, whether it's ball striking or it's putting or it's around the green, I don't really care. The extra confidence of going into last week and finishing T5 on the DP World Tour is enough for me to want to at least go back to in GPPs this week. That's kind of how I view it.
And there's some place you don't have to reach too far here. I mean, the ownership is going to be hard pressed to get over 5% down here below 7K. But there are some very viable plays here. There's some that really kind of stick out to me. But the Adri Arnaud is one that sticks out for me. Lipsky, boy, Lipsky's it's just shocked me at the Canadian Open, finishing at 18% ownership, and of course he missed the cut. And the very following week that he played the Travelers, he went all the way down to 2% ownership. Not a lot of loyalty there in the Lipsky play. That was one of the more surprising.
Well, you want to talk about that? You talk about swings. Talk about the Goddard upswings from the Canadian Open. Everyone wanted to play him at 64 or 6,300, whatever it was, and then the next week he tees it up and he's like 4%.
Yeah,
people gave up so quick. And then if you would have played him the next couple of weeks, you would have been making a lot of money, or at least a chance to. So. Yeah, people are quick to give up on fringe plays down here. Yeah.
But it does drop off pretty quick. I mean, we looking down here in the mid 6Ks, there's just not a lot that really is going to stand out. Smalley played pretty good last week in the top 15, and we're really getting into some European players. And there's some young up and comers here, and the likes of Thriston Lawrence, but I mean that's just going to be very tough for a lot of people to reach out there. His odds don't look so bad in this range, but I don't see a lot of the traditional PGA DFS crowd kind of moving in that direction.
No, the one guy that stood out to me from a price standpoint is Callum Tarrant. Maybe people do or do not know, but he is originally from England, and he's like a mid-30s guy, mid-30-year-old. So he has experience playing on league-style golf course, and he's been playing relatively well the last couple of weeks, and that's probably worth a shot at 6,300. When I looked under 65, there weren't many guys that even worth looking into further. But Callum Tarrant at his price, at least off of his, his run at the U.S. Open, he had a decent 36 holes, and then played well last week on the weekend. So, like I said, the recent form, however they're getting it done, is enough for me to go back to at these prices. And Callum Tarrant 6,300. If you can fit him in, I mean, that leaves so much salary available, assuming he makes the cut. And what we've seen, and I don't know what the cut rate was here last year at this event, but generally speaking, on the DP World Tour, like 6 of 6 is awful. I mean, it's just the guys are so volatile. It's like 4%, 6%, like as a mean. It's pretty crazy. So don't be afraid to get a little bit weird on one or two cheap guy, really cheap guys to try to jam in the top range, because like we said at the top of the show, the cream will rise to the top. And if you have a little bit more win equity over 8K, that's probably the way to go. I really like the balance builds, but when I look at GPPs, like the $50 or the $20, I think it was a $20. Just trying to make a really weird lineup with like 3 guys over 9K and just trying to punt off, like I said, Callum Tarrant, a Ju Young Kim at 6,400. There's just a few guys that are worth a little bit of upside in terms of making the cut and finishing top 20, in my opinion. There's not a lot.
There's not really not many. There are a few. You did. I think you did hit on the right ones to take those chances on. But
it's just recent form. It's like the guys. I mean, there are PGA Tour names down here. Lucas Glover, 6,500. Doug Gimmett, 6,500. Yeah, I mean, you could throw him into your pool. It's not the worst thing. It's probably better plays than Mikko Korhonen, although he did finish pretty well last week, I believe. But there's just, I think that you can get a little bit unique. Even if you eat some chalk up top, if you play a punt down here and play one extra guy over 8K, there could be enough win equity in the top range, and then just a top 25 from one of these guys is enough for you to do really well in the GPPs, because the European Tour DFS is very wild. I mean, 6 of 6 on Thursday could be like 40%, and then Friday it's 5%. It's wild.
Do you play a lot of the Euro DFS?
I used to work with Skyhook, who's a big European Tour guy on Twitter, and he got me into playing it, and I would follow it for, especially leading up to the Open. So I played a lot last week, the last 2 weeks, and I do follow Cut Sweats, and I'll get their Cut Sweat notification for the European Tour, and it's pretty comical. I mean, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think it was like the week or two before the U.S. Open. I want to say it was like 1%, 6 of 6. Like it's just crazy, because all the chalk isn't as stable as the chalk on the PGA Tour. Not to say it's incredibly stable most weeks anyways, but it's just very difficult for these guys to maintain great form for weeks on weeks on weeks, which is what most people are looking at, the recent form, like I said. So yeah, it does get very, very nutty with the 6 of 6 percentage. And with the pricing, if guys have to get weird with these 7K guys, it's going to be tough to get a ton of good cut equity, especially with some unknowns with the link style. Like I said, if I go and play Luke List and he misses the cut, but I paired him with someone else that was up top that he missed the cut, like Patrick Cantley or somebody, all of a sudden I have a 4 or 6 and the lineup looked decent on paper on Thursday. So it just is it can be a very weird week.
Well, let's say you want to pick some winners, Drew?
Yeah, we can pick some winners.
Let's pick some winners.
All righty. What do you want to pick? Like 2 of them, 3 of them?
Yeah, let's pick maybe a couple of upper echelons, and maybe we'll have a couple picks down below. Some long shots.
All righty. Let's see here. I'll tell you the first guy that I'll pick. I will go right back to Xander as an outright. He got a decent Open record, second here in 2018, or second in the 2018 Open. So I'll go with Xander. And then I'll tell you what. I'll go hot take. I'll take Fleetwood.
Oh, that was who I was going to take.
Perfect. Very nice on the same page.
Yeah, definitely on the same page there. It's so hard to play him, but you just feel like he's due.
Of all the courses,
I feel like he's going to feel comfortable here, and
yes.
the moment you don't expect him to win is when he's going to do it. So
Yeah.
I really think that he's due. He's just due.
Yeah.
And outside of him, I think I really like Burns. I think Burns is the one that's about to pop. I really see him, acclimating well here, and I do like Sam Burns there up top.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. It's funny when you talk about outrights, and as I go down the board, I'm looking for European guys because when every American I pick, I'm like, yeah, they could do well, but I don't know about winning. Especially really cheap guys. Let's say mid-range. I mean, Max Homa won the Genesis Invitational. Why not win the Genesis Scottish Open? That'll probably be my hot take this week. Max Homa owns 2 Genesis championships.
There you go.
He's just been playing so good. I love, especially the fact that he played well at the Wells Fargo. I'm not necessarily saying the conditions will be similar this week in terms of the rainy, wet, nasty. But if he can grind out those type of weeks, he'll do fine in any bad weather at a link style course. So yeah, I like Homa a good bit.
Well, let's get. I just feel like I want to reach a little bit there for a links type player and one that might be trending up a little bit, and it's going to be. I do like Dietrich. I do like Hao Tong Lee, but I think I'm going to lean towards. I think I'll go with Aaron Rai here. 2 club.
I thought you were going to say McIntyre. Okay. I like it. Yeah, I mean, the easy way out, I'll just say Dietrich. 7,100. I don't know what his outright number is. I don't have that pulled up, but back-to-back top 4s, played well last week. Of all the outrights, it makes the most sense to me for him. I shouldn't say of all the outrights. Of most of the outrights, it makes the most sense for a long shot like him to win over like a Siwoo Kim, which doesn't make sense. I just can't see that on the headlines next week. Siwoo Kim wins the Scottish Open, but Thomas Dietrich winning the Scottish Open makes sense. Yeah, it's probably as deep. I mean, you could probably take some type of long shot on Arnaus or somebody, but I don't know if any of the deep guys have a chance, or at least that I want to give them a chance. Callum Tarrant. I'll just say Callum Tarrant. I don't know what he is. Got to be like 200 to 1, 250 to 1.
Yeah, he's in the 400 range.
Oh, he's 400 to 1.
Yeah, there's a few other guys that I'm seeing with a little bit better odds. Matthew Jordan, I don't know much about him at 6,200 is getting a few some decent odds. But there's also we had Sebastian Soderbergh actually made the cut at the U.S. Open, finished, I don't know, 250 or so, but he doesn't look half bad there in the very extreme low 6K range. I think he's at 6.3K.
I was going to pull up. Where'd it go? Don't have it up. I was going to see what Stuart Sink played well here. He's 6,400. Really interesting from a DFS perspective. Probably not an outright price, but I think that's pretty much it for me there, Trey. I'm not sure anybody else really calls out my name to take a stab on them. I would just say for most people, don't get too crazy. Get carried away with your player pool. It's very easy to start plucking in one European tour guy after another and say like, yeah, he could play well. Because like I said, their recent form is all over the place. Like you mentioned, Ryan Fox's good recent form, and he's got a miscut in there, the PGA, and I think he had another like 60-something place finish prior to his string of top 2s. So it can be very, very unpredictable. Any other thoughts for you?
No, I think I'm good. Just I think it'd be very important to keep an eye on the weather. Here on Monday evening, it doesn't look like anything too rough or nasty on Thursday or Friday, but definitely want to keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on Kevin Ross' report, hopefully coming a little bit earlier on Wednesday, and keep an eye on the ownership updates that will be coming out. I'll do another one on Tuesday morning, Tuesday evening, and then I'll do one real early Wednesday, and then one just a couple hours before lock.
All right, sounds good. Thank you everybody for tuning in to Drive for Show DFS for Dough. Hopefully we were viable candidates to fill in for Noto and Cards. They will be back next week as well to preview the Open Championship, which we're pretty excited for. So as far as content this week, I think everything will be up as normal. Expert survey, rankings, etc. It'll be all focused on the Scottish Open, and obviously the projections will be up for the Barbasol. I assume they'll have contests for the Barbasol as an alternate field event as well. So should be plenty of DFS golf for you to dive into this week. So without further ado, we'll get out of here. Trae, thank you so much. Great co-host.
Thank you,
and
Drew.
best
Good luck,
of luck
everybody.
this week. Good luck, guys. Thanks.